Hi, it's Amy Shaw here, practicing shaman in the Austin, Texas area. The topic I have to talk about today is the mother wound, and the reason this is really coming up, it's fresh on my mind. I haven't had actually a lot of time to articulate the message that needs to come through me today. So it's pretty fresh, it's pretty raw. I'm not exactly sure what's going to come out, but the reason this is actually on my mind is because it's the end of December. And it's the holiday season. We just got through Thanksgiving, we just got through Christmas, and I know a lot of people are struggling with the mother wound. It's something that I myself have had to do some significant healing and self-introspection on, and I just want to talk a little bit about that. My mother did pass away very unexpectedly in 2014. She and I were not speaking at the time, which really wasn't my doing, it was her doing. It was sort of the pattern of our relationship, of how it would go. So I did everything I could to stay reconciled to her, but it was very difficult. So my entire life really had a very conflicted relationship with my mother, and there was significant wounding as a result of that. She was the central figure throughout my entire life up until the point that she passed away, really. And so a lot of stuff happened external to my relationship with her, but she was that one central figure that was consistent throughout all, the years of difficulty and trauma and things that I experienced in my childhood. So I did get a pretty significant, wounding in my relationship with her, and we didn't have a very good relationship. Now, I'm not going to talk about the specific details of my mother or my relationship with my mother or the patterns and things that happened between us. Most simply because, my mother has transitioned, and out of respect and honor for her, I just want to keep it at that level of stating that it was a difficult and conflicted relationship, and really wasn't until she passed away, actually, that my relationship with her really was able to significantly improve. And that wasn't a matter of her passing away as much as it was a matter of me having done a significant amount of healing in my own life and coming to that place of being able to see my mother with soul eyes. So that's really what I want to focus on and talk about, is overcoming that mother wound. There's layers and layers that occur in healing, to get all the way to the soul level. It requires, tremendous amount of introspection, witnessing shadow, and it's a lot of work, a lot of self-healing. But it really doesn't actually have to be complicated. It really doesn't actually have to take years and years and years and years of psychotherapy to get to that point. I think for me the biggest shift really came when I was able to see my mother with soul eyes. And that's something that's really difficult to do in our Western culture, because we're very self-determined, individualistic, autonomous, independent, all these things, that we're taught. And so as we're developing ego, we're very strong in the ego front in Western cultures. And the result of that is we become very disconnected. In more tribal cultures, they honor their ancestors. In that indigenous way of life, they understand that they stand on the shoulders of their ancestors, and then before them, and then before them, and then before them. And it's really built into their culture, this idea of honoring the ancestors, regardless of who they are, for all their faults, for all the, traumas and things, and understanding the threads of connections of how that comes through. I recently made a video about healing from ancestral trauma and the need to do ancestral work, and that definitely comes in and applies to this video as well. So I suggest that you might want to go take a look at that video after you're done watching this. But this, I want to specifically talk about the mother wound in a first generational, thread of being connected as the child of a mother, whether you're male or female, and the wounding is going to be a little bit different depending on, all those sort of circumstances. But overall, I think a lot of people do struggle with the mother wound. And so really what I want to say about that is that ancestral disconnection in our Western culture, I think, has not served us well. And, in more indigenous cultures, even in the American Hispanic culture here in the United States, they have very strong lineage. La familia is a big thing for them in their culture. as I talked about in my ancestral healing video, they keep that tradition through the Dia de los Muertos in the way that they celebrate and honor the ancestors. And again, I'll mention the Disney movie Coco just recently came out. I took my granddaughter to see it. If you have the opportunity to watch that movie, it's phenomenal. I think that it really honors the Mexican and Hispanic cultures, Latino cultures, in how they celebrate and honor their ancestors, and it gives a very clear sort of idea of what ancestral healing is and how family curses can be spread down and all that stuff. Just really great insight into that. Definitely being in shamanic practice, I encounter that a lot, and I've definitely experienced it in my own life. I talk a little bit about that in that video, so I won't rehash all that. But in terms of the mother wound, I just want to say that the disconnection from the ancestors is a very big part of why we struggle with healing from the mother wound, and why it takes years and years and years and years of psychotherapy to work through that stuff. Because it's really as simple as just understanding that who I am today, as I sit before you in my full strength, in my power, in my shamanic practice, with all the knowledge and all the wisdom that I've gained, it could only come from my mother. It directly was the result of my mother. And so for me to dishonor that, in a sense, by saying, oh, my mom's responsible for all my trauma and all these years of, healing that I had to do to overcome this, and, my mom's of this, my mom's of that, and this and that. I'm holding on to that really does not honor her, and it absolutely does not honor me or the work that I've done or that I've been called to do. The soul contract that I made when I came here into this incarnation, and how I chose to serve. I wouldn't be the wounded healer if I wasn't wounded. And so my mother was a big, 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 big part of that wounding. And rather than sort of wagging my finger and blaming and shaming and feeling animosity or resentment towards her, I've come to the place of really recognizing and embracing and honoring her, that, she learned to be the mother that she was from her mother, and on and on and on. And so this process of, the ancestral lineage brought me to this exact precise moment that I am today. And so I can't disrespect that or dishonor that by saying that was bad, that it shouldn't have happened, that, this or that or the other. But to just recognize, in a lot of ways, I see how my mother actually gave her life up in service to me. I don't want to go into the details of that, but my mother had a wonderful life. She traveled all over the world. She got to go to some amazing places, and she had a fabulous life. But in terms of her relationships and her connection with family and friends and building, a depth of relationship, she struggled in that. And I think that that's part of what she gave up, is that depth of human connection, the depth of being able to interrelate with other people in meaningful ways, to build those meaningful relationships and meaningful connections, and to have that sense of belonging and community and all that. I really think in a lot of ways my mother gave that up as part of her path in service to me. It definitely has served me. When I start thinking about a topic that needs to be discussed, and I want to make a video about it, stuff I sort of tune in, and then stuff really starts coming through in these synchronous ways that weave and feed themselves in to give me a little bit bigger picture. Well, I didn't have a lot of time to do that about this topic. Yesterday, Mitch Horowitz tweeted and then reshared it on his Facebook, a very simple quote, and it just was, "Let adversity serve you." And I thought that's a really profound aspect of what I'm talking about today, and healing from the mother wound is to see that as a form of service to you, to making you who you are. And it's tough. It's tough stuff getting through it. It's a lot of pain and processing, and it's healing is not an easy thing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But as I stated, to be the wounded healer, you have to be wounded. And so it's part of the process. And in that sense, it's quite possible that you've made a soul contract with your mother. If you're experiencing the mother wound, it's quite possible that you have made that soul contract to incarnate with her and for her to be the wounder, so that you could become the wounded healer. And so when you honor your ancestors that way and learn to recognize that they're human beings too, and that they have their path too, and that you are really standing on their shoulders, and that you are who you are today, in a large part because of them. And that's not to say that you haven't done the work, or that you have to give all of the credit. I'm not saying that at all. I know how incredibly difficult it has been for me to get to this point that I am in the path. But I'm saying it's difficult in our culture to keep those threads in honoring and respecting our ancestors. And because we've lost the acknowledgement of that in our culture, we can struggle and sort of spin our wheels a lot longer in the healing process because of that disconnect. Because we want to, be autonomous and independent, and to blame and to shame and to pretend like we are not a part of a longer lineage, an ancestral lineage that has absolutely 100% supported us to be exactly where we are today. So if you're not happy with where you're at today, then that really isn't an issue with your mother or your father, or any of your experiences or relationships that you've had. It's an issue of you with yourself. So I would just encourage you to keep working on that, and to find that place of your inner strength and power, and being at peace with yourself. And once you come into alignment with yourself, your soul mission here on earth in this incarnation, I think it's much easier to work with this mother wound. So anyway, I hope that gave you a little bit of insight, that it was helpful in some ways. And if you have questions or comments, you can leave them down below, and you can always get a hold of me. There's a lot of different ways. Just search around on my channel a little bit, and you'll find many different ways to get a hold of me. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you so much.